What if one night you told your child to go to bed and wait for the Sandman, and something actually came? What if a harmless expression, a phrase parents have whispered for generations, wasn't just a phrase? Tonight's story isn't about monsters under the bed. It isn't about something hiding in the closet. It's about something far worse. It's about something that only appears after you invite it. And by the time you realize what it is, it's already part of your family. Imagine being a single father, tired, overworked, trying your best. You say something silly to make your son sleep. Go to bed and wait for the Sandman. The next morning he asks, "What does the Sandman look like?" You laugh it off. It's just an expression. But that night, you check on him, and someone else is sitting on the edge of his bed. Not a burglar, not a man. Something pale, twisted, wrong. Something that moves like its bones were assembled without instructions. And that's only the beginning. Because sometimes the scariest part isn't what you see. It's what disappears. A child who slowly stops speaking. A heartbeat that can't be heard. Memories that don't line up. Rooms that feel occupied, even when they're empty. And the most terrifying question of all, what if your child was never truly yours? Tonight on Fear Spiral, we're diving into a psychological horror story that will crawl under your skin and stay there. This isn't about blood. This isn't about violence. This is about identity, memory, loneliness, and something that feeds on what you desperately want. As you watch, ask yourself, if something offered to give you the one thing you've always wanted, would you ask where it came from, or would you just accept it? Because sometimes the price isn't paid up front. Sometimes it collects later. Before we go deeper into this nightmare, if you love psychological horror that lingers long after the video ends, make sure you subscribe to Fear Spiral. Like this video if you enjoy stories that bend reality, and comment below. What do you think the Sandman really is? A creature? A hallucination? Or something far more personal? Now, turn the lights down, lock your doors, and whatever you do, be careful what you invite into your home, because once it becomes part of your family, it may never truly leave. Story 1. The Thing in the House. James never meant to invite anything. That was the thought that replayed in his mind later, over and over, like a scratched record refusing to move forward. He had only been tired. Daniel had refused to sleep that night, the kind of stubborn refusal only a child can manage. Wide eyes in the dark, blankets kicked aside, small hands gripping the edge of the mattress as if sleep itself were something dangerous. Go to bed, James had sighed from the doorway. Daniel shook his head, and that was when James said it. Go to bed and wait for the Sandman. Even as the words left his mouth, they felt strange. Not wrong, just oddly specific, as if he had borrowed them from someone else's memory. Daniel blinked. "Okay," he said quietly, and he lay down. The next morning felt normal. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds. Eggs sizzled in a pan. The world, stubbornly, continued as it always did. Daniel sat at the table, his short legs swinging beneath the chair. "What does a Sandman look like?" he asked. James didn't look up at first. "Nothing really. It's just something people say." "What does it mean?" "Go to sleep." Daniel seemed to consider that. He accepted the plate of eggs without another word. James kissed the top of his head and dismissed the unease. Children ask strange questions all the time. He thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. That night, James followed his usual routine. Check the locks. Turn off the downstairs lights. Stand in Daniel's doorway for a moment, just to make sure. It was something he had done every night since Daniel was born. A quiet ritual. A father's insurance against the dark. He pushed the door open slowly and froze. Something sat on the edge of Daniel's bed. At first, his mind refused to understand what he was seeing. It was pale, thin, unnaturally still, rocking slightly forward and back. The shape resembled a man, but only in the most technical sense. The limbs were too long, the joints bent at subtle incorrect angles. The skin looked stretched, not torn, just wrong, as though it had been pulled over something that didn't quite fit inside. For one suspended second, James believed it was a burglar. Then it turned its head. The movement was sharp, mechanical, like something mimicking the idea of turning rather than knowing how to do it. And James understood. This was not a man. It had no hair, no expression, no recognizable emotion. Its face was smooth and pale, like wax left in the sun too long. Daniel lay inches away from it, watching. James's body reacted before his thoughts did. He rushed forward with a shout, adrenaline flooding his limbs. The thing didn't leap, didn't defend itself. It simply watched him. And in that terrible stillness, James felt something warm spreading down his legs, his body betraying him. Then instinct returned. Daniel. He grabbed his son and stumbled backward into the hallway. For one heartbeat, he expected the creature to chase them. It didn't. It remained seated, watching. Then, in a jerking, stuttering motion, like frames missing from a film, it crawled toward the window. Its limbs moved in uneven rhythms. And then it was gone. The curtains billowed. Silence followed. The police came. James struggled to describe what he had seen. A man, he began. But that wasn't accurate. A burglar, he corrected. Daniel said the same. A man in a mask. James clung to that version. A mask explained everything. A costume explained everything. Except the movement. Except the way it had watched. Except the way it had left. The officers found nothing. No forced entry. No fingerprints. No footprints. The doctors examined Daniel. No injuries. No signs of harm. Relief flooded James so intensely he almost collapsed. They stayed at a motel for 2 nights, then returned home. James installed security cameras, alarms, metal bars on Daniel's windows, precautions stacked upon precautions. But safety is not the same as peace. 2 weeks later, Daniel stopped speaking. At first, it was subtle. Short answers, nods, shrugs, then silence. Complete. The doctors said it could be delayed trauma. Children process fear in strange ways. James wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe this was normal. But the house no longer felt normal. At night, he heard movement, not footsteps. Something, a dragging sound, like something large sliding across hardwood floors. When he rushed to investigate, nothing. Always nothing. But sometimes, from the corner of his eye, a pale shape retreating, a shadow folding into itself. Sleep abandoned him. He began checking Daniel constantly, examining him, listening to his chest with an old stethoscope from his CNA training days. One morning, he couldn't hear a heartbeat. He adjusted the placement, pressed harder. Nothing. He tested it on himself. Clear and steady. Back to Daniel. Silence. Daniel only smiled. A small, patient smile. James convinced himself the stethoscope was broken. He threw it away. But something had already cracked. Inside him, days blurred. The house felt larger than it should. Too many rooms. Too many spaces he couldn't see at once. He imagined figures occupying the unseen corners, melting into walls, sliding along ceilings. If he wasn't looking at a space, he became certain something was. Watching, waiting. Daniel, strangely, seemed calm. He hugged his father when James trembled, held his hand when James paced. Sometimes James cried after Daniel left the room. He didn't know why. One night at 2 a.m., James decided to confront it. If it was there, he would find it. He moved through the house in darkness, listening, breathing slowly. The spare bedroom drew him. Bare walls, unfinished floorboards, a room that never felt inhabited, yet never felt empty. He stepped inside. The light flickered. He froze. A thought struck him like ice. It's on the ceiling. He imagined it clinging above him. crawling across plaster, waiting to drop. His heart pounded. He turned, nothing. He checked twice, nothing. Relief should have come. It didn't, because if it wasn't there, then it was somewhere else. He moved to Daniel's room, pressed his ear to the door, and heard something that shattered him more than any crawling shape could. Daniel was talking, softly, to someone. James burst inside. Daniel sat upright in bed, silent. The room was empty. James searched everything. Closet, toy box, corners, ceiling, nothing. Daniel only watched. And for the first time, there was something in his expression that unsettled James more than silence ever had. A kind of knowing. James sank onto the bed, exhausted beyond reason. Tomorrow, he decided, they would leave. They would escape this house, start fresh. No more paranoia, no more fear. He brushed a hand through Daniel's hair and stopped. Something felt wrong. He moved his hand to the side of Daniel's head, then the other. His breath stalled. Daniel had no ears, not cut off, not injured, just smooth skin where they should have been. James stared, his vision blurred. Daniel blinked calmly, and that was when James heard it. "Hello, Dad," but Daniel's lips had not moved. James slowly turned toward the hallway and saw the pale figure sitting there, waiting. Story 2. What was borrowed? The thing in the hallway did not stand. It didn't lunge. It simply rocked back and forth, long limbs folded awkwardly beneath it, as if it had never fully learned how a body should rest. James tightened his grip around Daniel. His son felt lighter, not slightly, noticeably. "Hello, Dad." It carried Daniel's tone, but stretched thin, like a recording played at the wrong speed. The sound seemed to scrape against the walls before reaching his ears. "Don't call me that," James whispered. The creature's head tilted sharply to one side. "It is the name this voice uses for you." Daniel shifted in James's arms. His small fingers tugged weakly at his father's shirt. James dared to look down. Daniel's eyelids were closed tightly. "Danny," James breathed. "Open your eyes. Open your eyes." Slowly, reluctantly, Daniel obeyed. James almost dropped him. There were no eyes, no wounds, no blood. Just smooth skin where sight used to be. James staggered backward. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. He is returning," the creature said calmly. "Piece by piece." "What are you?" James croaked. "Something you invited." "I didn't invite you." The head jerked again, unnaturally fast. "You said to wait." James's mind flashed back. "Go to bed and wait for the Sandman." His throat tightened. That's just a saying. It was not to me. The hallway seemed longer now. The walls subtly unfamiliar. The creature unfolded itself slowly, rising higher than James expected. Its limbs straightened in uneven segments, like a puppet being pulled upright by invisible strings. "You were alone," it continued. "You wanted a son." James's heart slammed painfully in his chest. "I have a son. You wanted one." The emphasis pressed into him like cold fingers. "Who is Daniel's mother?" the creature asked. James blinked. The question struck something deep and empty. He hesitated. Her name. What was her name? His mind offered nothing. Just a vague blur. "When is Daniel's birthday?" James opened his mouth. Silence. What was his first word? You wanted a child so badly that you did not ask how." James's breath came in shallow bursts. Memories fluttered around him like torn pages. Hospital rooms, paperwork, a crib, birthdays. But every detail felt unanchored. "I made one," the creature said. "From what I am." Daniel's weight shifted again. Lighter. James looked down. Daniel's hair was thinning, Strands faded before they reached the floor. "No," James whispered. "It was always temporary. You're lying." "I do not lie. I warned you. You forget." The word echoed inside his skull. Forget. Had they spoken before? In dreams? In those long nights of loneliness before Daniel? Fragments surfaced, him sitting alone in the dark house, whispering that he wished he had someone. Anyone. A child's laughter and a memory that didn't fully form. "You said you would give anything," the creature continued. James felt something unravel inside him. Daniel's hands vanished into the sleeves of his pajamas. His legs shrank within the fabric. He was becoming empty, like clothes stuffed with air. "Stop," James screamed. "Take me instead." That was not the agreement. "I don't remember any agreement. You remember only what I allow." Daniel's body grew softer, undefined, like a shape losing structure. James fell to his knees, clutching him. "Give him back." "I am." Daniel's mouth opened. No voice came. His outline blurred. And then he was gone. James held only fabric. Then the fabric dissolved. The hallway stretched unnaturally long. Photographs on the walls shimmered. Frames became blank. The sound of toys clattering in Daniel's room echoed faintly. Then silence. James scrambled toward the bedroom, where the door had been. There was only wall, smooth, unbroken. He clawed at it. "There was a room here," he shouted. "There was never a room," the creature replied softly. James turned slowly. The house felt smaller now, simpler, emptier. "You cannot erase him," James screamed. "People will remember. They remember only what I permit." Images flickered through his mind. Police officers, doctors, neighbors, their faces blurred. Had they ever spoken Daniel's name? Had Daniel ever had a school, friends, a birth certificate? His thoughts twisted painfully. "You were lonely," the creature said gently. "I learned from you. I became what you needed." James stared at it. And now I reclaim what was mine." The creature stepped closer. Its presence no longer seemed aggressive, just inevitable. "You will forget," it said. "Please," James whispered. "Let me keep something. One memory." For a moment, the creature reached out. A cold, damp sensation touched James's shoulder. His mind exploded with images. Daniel laughing. Daniel running down the hallway. Daniel asking about the Sandman. Daniel hugging him. Warmth, joy, love. And then, the images began to fade, like ink dissolving in water. James grasped at them desperately, but they slipped through him. "Why tell me?" he choked. "Because a father should know." The creature's form thinned, its outline merging with shadow. And then, James was alone. Months later, Abigail watched James from across the living room. He sat staring at a blank section of wall, frowning slightly, as if something had once been there. "James?" she called gently. He blinked. "Sorry. I just feel like I forgot something." "You work too hard." He rubbed his temples. "Do you ever feel like the house is bigger than it should be?" Abigail laughed softly. "It's a two-bedroom. Two-bedroom." The words unsettled him for reasons he couldn't explain. At night, James sometimes sleepwalked. Abigail would wake to find him standing in the hallway, whispering, "Go to bed." He'd murmur faintly, "Wait for the Sandman." He never remembered saying it. Sometimes, when Abigail lay awake beside him, she imagined faint scuttling sounds in the dark, a soft dragging across the ceiling. She told herself it was pipes, old wood settling, nothing more. But on certain nights, when her longing for a child felt sharp enough to ache, a thought would form. What if someone could give us one? Just like that. No doctors, no waiting, no heartbreak, and for a split second, she would swear she felt something listening. In the darkness above their bed, something patient shifted. Not hungry, not cruel, just waiting for the next invitation. Some stories end with answers. This one ends with a question. What did James really lose? Was it a son, or was it the illusion of one? That's the part that lingers long after the screen goes dark. Because the true horror here isn't a pale creature in the hallway. It isn't something crawling across ceilings. It isn't even the idea of memory being erased. The real horror is this. Loneliness can make us invite things we don't understand. Desperation can make us accept gifts without asking where they came from. And sometimes, the mind protects itself by forgetting the cost. James wanted a child, not in a dramatic, desperate way. Just quietly, deeply. The kind of wanting that sits with you at night. The kind that makes an empty house feel too big. And something heard him, something that didn't break in. It waited to be welcomed. That's what makes this story unsettling. The creature never forced its way inside it. Responded. It answered. It gave. And then it took back what was always borrowed. So here's the question I want you thinking about tonight. If you were offered the one thing you've always wanted, and all you had to do was forget how you got it, would you say yes, or would you ask what happens later? Because in this story, the Sandman isn't just a creature. It's a metaphor for longing, for grief, for the dangerous spaces in our minds where reality and desire blur together. And maybe, just maybe, the scariest part is that the cycle continues. James forgets, Abigail begins to wish, the house waits, and something patient listens in the dark. That's how horror works best. Not with screams, not with gore, but with the quiet realization that it could happen again. Maybe even to you. If this story unsettled you, good. That means it did its job. If it made you think, even better. Because here on Fear Spiral, we explore the kind of horror that doesn't just jump at you. It stays with you. If you enjoyed this psychological descent into memory and identity, make sure you subscribe to Fear Spiral so you never miss the next story that bends reality. Hit like if you love horror that crawls under your skin instead of relying on shock. And tell me in the comments, do you think Daniel was ever real, or was he always something borrowed? I read your theories, and sometimes your interpretations are even darker than the stories themselves. Until next time, sleep carefully, choose your words wisely, and whatever you do, don't invite anything into your home unless you're prepared to lose it. This is Fear Spiral, and the darkness is only getting deeper.